I'm Dr. Kristen R. Bromley. This video series, which is part of my online music academy, specifically accompanies Note Reading Book 3 from my Method book series. Like all my books, this selection is available to purchase through Amazon and Google Play. For help, see the links in the description below. In the videos which are part of this specific course, I progress through the lessons in Note Reading Book 3, explaining and demonstrating concepts and playing each of the songs and exercises contained therein, so you can hear how they sound and play them right along with me. You are of course welcome to view these videos with or without the book, but with the book you can work through all the songs and exercises, and in the process come to know the entire fretboard and master the skill of playing written notes all along the neck. Alright, let's get to jamming in this lesson. Hi, I'm Dr. Kristen Bromley. Welcome to my online academy, or I should say welcome back. It's so great to have you joining me here in these lessons. This is lesson 13 for Note Reading Book 3. So this lesson goes with Note Reading Book 3. And we're going to go ahead and just jump in. In lesson 13, we're working on the keys of D major and B minor. So we've read a whole bunch in the key of C, and we should have the neck down that way. Then we worked on A minor, which is relative to the key of C major, so it has the same key signature. Then we worked G major and E minor, looked at G flat major and E flat minor. Now we're looking at D major, which has two sharps. So we're going to go ahead and take a look on page 99 at number 1. So this is the single octave scale exercise. I'll demonstrate it in one place. So we've got the D major scale, form 1, and I'm playing it here with my middle finger on the 5th string at the 5th fret, and that's where that D is. We know where that D is, and we're using scale form 1, 2 4 1 2 3 4. So let's go ahead and read this exercise with that scale. So you're going to have 1 and 2 and ready and go and. Now you could also do that with scale form 1 with your middle finger on the root of the 6th string, which is at the 10th fret. So we'd be in 9th position. We got scale form 1 there as well in that same octave. We also have scale form 2 with our pinky on the 6th string at that 10th fret. So we'd be in 7th position playing scale form 1 and a little bit in 6th position. So we could play that one with that. And then we've also got the pinky on that D at the 5th fret, which puts us in 2nd position playing scale form 2. So those are all the ways we could play it in that octave. Now if we flip on over to page 100, we're going to have the D major single octave scale up an octave. So if we were to take a look at it up an octave, we've got a couple different options. If we put our middle finger right there on the D that's at the 12th fret of the 4th string, we are up an octave. So, and we also have the D that's at the 7th fret on the 3rd string, scale form 1. So either one of those in scale form 1 will work just fine. I'm going to read it in 7th position. So you're going to have 1 and 2 and ready and go and... Okay, now, like I mentioned, we could also play that one, and maybe you did play that one in 11th position, so our middle finger on the 4th string on the D that's on the 4th string. Alternatively, in that octave, you could also put your pinky on the 4th string at the 12th fret, putting us in 9th position, and play scale form 2. So that's the other way, that's the other form that we could read that with. There, though, moving on page 100, we've got the B minor single octave exercises. So, with the B minor scale, we've got scale form 1. If we were down in second position, my index finger is on the B that's at the 2nd fret. So I've got 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3. That's how we finger that. I've also got in that octave the B that's at the 7th fret on the 6th string, so I could play it there as well. So you can play it either way with scale form 1. I'm going to go ahead and play it in second position. So you got 1 and 2 and ready and go and. Okay, now with that octave, you could also play it with your pinky on that B that's at the 7th fret of the 6th string and play scale form 2. It's good to practice them in all the different ways. It helps you as you're learning this. What's kind of interesting about this book is we take like 10 lessons and get used to just the key of C and then A minor, where we have no sharps and flats, and then suddenly we're like, okay, now let's go explore all these keys and all these positions. And each one of these lessons like that can take a little bit of time. You just keep working through them. I go through them though, so you've got at least one example of each exercise. So I'm going to go on to number 4. We're going to look at the one that's up the octave. So up the octave, we have the B that's at the 14th fret on the 5th string, so where we were just reading, but one octave higher. We've also got the B on the 4th string that's at the 9th fret. And we even have the B that's at the 3rd string, 4th fret of the 3rd string. And then we have, alternatively, we have scale form 2. So I could put my pinky on that B that's on that 5th string at the 14th fret and play scale form 2. And we also have that same thing, pinky on the 9th fret of the 4th string, scale form 2. I'm going to go ahead and play this one with my index on the 3rd string, 4th fret. I'm going to play it there, but you can play it in any of those places and really should play it in all of them. Okay, so here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and go and okay. So, and that one can be done in all those different positions. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at the full second position. So all of these notes in second position. We're starting off with the minor scale exercise there at the bottom of page 101, but it could be major as well. So in the second position though, from the minor, we have So we'll go ahead and read this one. Now it has some 16th notes, so I'm going to count it off even slower because it's nice to actually get the pitches as we're going through and not having it be too fast. So I'm going to keep that 1 E and kind of tempo, which means that the quarter notes are going to be really slow and the eighth notes will be a little bit slow as well. So you're going to have 1 E and 2 E and ready E and go E and that may seem super slow, but it's good to be able to work on these things where you can play them accurately, and then you can gradually speed them up. And I presume, this being challenging, that it's better to go on the slow side than the fast side. Okay, we can flip on over to page 102 and take a look at the D major scale in that same position. So the D major scale, in second position has that pinky on the D. This one has some 16th notes and some triplets, so I'm going to again take it slow, but not quite as slow as last time. So we're going to go 1 E and 2 E and ready, E and go, E and and we'll go on to the next one. Before we do, I just want to mention that some of these rhythms, like the quarter note triplets, even the triplets, some of these are easier at faster tempos to sort of feel. And so at the slower tempos, we're really just trying to get the accuracy of the notes, but finding those rhythms can be a little bit harder. You speed up the tempo, it actually gets easier to find those rhythms. And practicing these with a metronome is a really great idea. I've been avoiding doing that so you don't have the clicking going on here, but it can be really helpful to just practice with a metronome. I'm just trying to be as accurate as I can, even at that slower tempo, catching some of those rhythms that are really felt easier and felt better and really only used when we're playing a little bit faster. So I just mentioned that. Okay, over on page 103, we get to play some melodies in this position, which is probably a little bit easier. Take them a little bit faster for us. So the old Zip Coon comes in on beat 4 in the pickup measure, and we'll have right about there. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Also mention as I'm doing this, sometimes it's easier and more fun to start out with the melodies and then work on the exercises. The exercises sort of prepare us to kind of read anything in that position that might be kind of typical, lots of different twists and turns, so it's good for us, but the melodies are kind of fun. And when I was first trying to figure out how to read all over the neck, I didn't have a book, but I would pull out hymn books and books with old folk tunes and stuff and just try and read the melodies in various positions, and that kind of gets us used to where those notes are, and then we can read exercises and harder melodic things to play. Okay, though, we're going to go ahead and do the Wabash Cannonball. Number 8 comes in on beat 4 in the pickup measure as well. So you got 1, 2, 3. Okay, and Amazing Grace comes in on beat 3 in the pickup measure. We're in 3/4 time. 3, 1, 2. Okay, and we'll flip on over to page 104. So now we're in the position, we're in fourth position, or fifth position. So for the key of D major, our middle finger is on that fifth fret of the fifth string, and we're playing scale form 1, and then we switch to part of scale form 2, back to scale form 1, and then we have part of scale form 2. So there we are in that position, and we'll go ahead and read number 10 in this position. So we're going to have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, ready E and a, go E and a. Okay, and we'll go over to page 105. We get the B minor exercise. So in this position, at B minor with our pinky on the B at the 7th fret. We'll go ahead and do number 11. So we're going to have, we'll take it just a little bit faster. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and go and... Okay, and we'll do some melodies. Now, I will say, like, I do this in one setting in one video, but it's best to do a little bit of reading. It's okay to just do a little bit of this at a time. One exercise a day, a couple melodies a day, just a little bit a day is the best practice for working on these. But here in the video, we just plow through, so I get lots of no reading practice right along with you, actually. So, all is well. This one has it starts in 4/4 time, but there's some spots that are in 3/4 time, so you just gotta watch for that. So we're gonna go 1, 2, ready, and... Okay, and we'll flip on over to page 106. I will mention in playing the melody like that, I kind of skipped the fermata spots. It's just a little bit easier when doing this to not worry about those, but you could do dramatic pauses in those spots if you wanted to. Okay, page 106, Good Night, Ladies. So we're going to go 1, 2, ready, and... I'll go on to the bottom of page 106 with number 14, and now we're in another position. So we're going to be up in 7th position and even a little bit in 6th position. Our pinky is on the D for the D major scale. Pinky's on that D at the 10th fret of the 6th string. I have to think for a second in that new position, and you probably do too. But we start out in scale form 2, then we go to scale form 1, switch back to scale form 2, and then we have just a teeny piece of scale form 1 there on the bottom of that scale in that position. We're in 3/4 time. We'll go 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, and we'll go on to number 15, the B minor scale in position 7. So we're using those same notes in that same position. And we'll do number 15. So you got 1 and 2 and ready and go and. Okay, we'll flip on over to page 108 and do Neander. So we're going to have 1, 2, ready, and... Okay, we'll go on to number 17. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. 1, 2, ready, and... And we'll do number 18, Oh Shenandoah. I'll give us a 3-beat count in, so we're ready to come in on beat 4. 1, 2, 3. And we'll do number 19, Floating Piece. 1 and 2 and ready and go and... Okay, so let's go on to number 20, In the Hall of the Mountain King. Now with this one, there are some chromatic notes. So we have chromatic notes. We just kind of work it the best we can. Sometimes we even go a little bit out of the position if we need to, but we sort of find them in the best way we can finger them. Remember, sharps are 1 fret higher than the natural note, flats are 1 fret lower, and sometimes we also might want to be using the one that would be on a different string. So let's look at In the Hall of the Mountain King just a little bit. In the second measure, you have E sharp and that's really easy because we can just finger that with our middle finger. So, and then just use that middle finger, and then we're back to the naturals, and then the C natural is actually a chromatic in the key as well. But that little movement is really parallel, so no big problem there. When you get to the higher octave of it on the next line, you can just go down. Now we would really have this spot where we could come back and be in 7th position, but it's going to be the most easy to just take that parallel motion right on down to 5th position, and I would probably just play it that way if I was reading music in real life. This is real life, but if I was just sight reading music with an ensemble or something, I would just play it that way because that would make sense. We've worked on some shifting, so that's really not a big stretch from anything we've done previously. We just haven't done it in this key, so you may want to check. You may want to do it that way, but you can finger it any way you want. There isn't an exact science per se to fingering the chromatic notes. On the third line, we've got the F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. I'm just going ahead and getting into 6th position sooner. And doing it from there. And then the last line is just like the first. Okay, let's go ahead and play this. 1 and 2 and ready and go and... Repeat that line. Okay, and we'll go on to number 21, which is the B minor scale in position 9. So we're now up in position 9 with this one. So my index finger is going to be on the B at the 9th fret on the 4th string. And I've got my B minor scale right there. Just like that. So go ahead and play this one in that position. 1 and 2 and ready and go and... Okay, let's go on to page 110, and we're going to do the D major scale in position 9. So in this position, I've got that low root on the 6th string at the 10th fret, and I'm going to play my major scale. So I'm starting with scale form 1, and then I switch to scale form 2 for that higher octave. I have just 2 notes, so I have that scale 1 again on top, back to scale 2, back to scale 1, and then I've got just that 1 extra note there on the bottom from scale 2. Okay, let's go ahead and play this one. 1 and 2 and ready and go and... we'll go over to the next page, page 111, and do row, row, row your boat. 1, 2, red, T, and. And we'll do number 24, Destiny. So we're going to have 1, 2, red, T, and. Okay, let's go on and do number 25 now, Drunken Sailor. 1, 2, red, T, and. Okay, so we can go on to page 112. We're going to do position 11 and 12 now, starting with D major. So number 26 is going to be our D major scale exercise. So we can just go ahead and review that D major scale. So middle finger on the 12th fret of the 4th string, we got a D, and then we go with that scale form 1. Then we can switch to scale form 2. We just have a little bit there. We come back down with scale form 1. We got scale form 2. And we're back to our root on that 4th string. So let's go ahead and do this one. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, and go, and... Okay, and let's go over to page 113 and we'll do the B minor scale exercise in this position. So B minor, we get our pinky on the 14th fret on the 5th string, and we get the B minor scale. So all the same notes in that position. Let's go ahead and do this one. 1 and 2 and 3 and go and Okay, and we'll do number 28, John Hardy. So we're going to do these melodies. This one does have a chromatic in it. You got to watch for that G sharp. This one has some tricky rhythms. You just kind of got to watch for that. It comes in on beat 3 in the pickup measure. So I'll give us 3, 4, 1, 2, and we'll be in. 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, so let's go on over to page 114 and we'll do number 29, the band played on. There's a couple accidentals in this one, so you gotta watch for C natural and A sharp. This is in 3/4 time. I'll give us a 3-beat count in. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now we get to the very end of this lesson where we're looking at shifting between forms, the double octave exercises. So this works just like we've done previously, where we can combine forms together. I could go through all of them, but I'm not going to. You can play around with it in the ways that you can shift from one positional form up to the next. So we've got a 2-octave scale here. We'll just look at one place where we could do this. Look right here where we've got the D major scale in first position. The form 1, but we're in 4th position because our middle finger's on that D that's at the 5th fret of the 5th string. And we can shift up then to the D major scale still in first, using that first form, but where our middle finger or our index, depending on how we're fingering it, is on the D note at the 7th fret on the 3rd string. So I'm just going to do it this one way, where we take that major scale and shift it. Now you can pick any way you want to play a 2-octave scale. Another great option would be to come to the D that's on the 6th string at the 10th fret, and you can shift up. We've done this before. We've looked at multiple ways that we could shift between forms, and you could play with those. You could also go back if you want to work on this and play through lots of different songs and exercises that are in the key of D for practicing with the key of D, and just start in positions other than the one specified and shift as you need to either finger something easier or because you've moved out of range. So those are ways to practice that. I'm just going to play through the 2 exercises here so you can hear how they sound, and you can work on it in the many different ways that we've done in the past if you want to. So number 30. So I'm just going to go ahead, like I said, and I'm going to play it in those 2 positions and shifting up. Now, of course, if I wanted to, I could shift on different strings, because what we're doing is essentially combining the scale form that happens at the 7th and 6th position with the scale form that happens at the 4th and the 5th position. So we kind of have a little leeway there if it doesn't always work to shift on that 3rd string. But I'm just going to go ahead and play this. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and go and And I'll play the one for B minor. So number 31. So when moving from B minor, there's different ways we can do it. I'm going to take right there in 7th position and connect it with the one in 9th position. That's how I'm going to do it for this particular reading, but you can do it in lots of different ways. So we're going to have 1 and 2 and ready and go and... Okay, and that wraps us up for this lesson. So if you've gotten all the way through this lesson, wowzer, awesome. Keep going. And you can work on these things, these keys. It's just a little bit a day is really the best thing. Hope you're having fun with the guitar. Take care. We'll see you again. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For help with other guitar playing skills, check out more of my method books and the numerous lessons available as part of my online academy here on YouTube. You can find more information about me and my products at kristenbromley.com. Take care.